I told Karen, "Go ahead, call them." She did, and Karen gets arrested before my coffee cooled. When the handcuffs finally clicked around Karen's wrists, my coffee was still steaming in my left hand. We were at the end of my driveway in Saguaro Ridge Estates, one of those Scottsdale-adjacent neighborhoods, so perfect it feels staged. I was in a faded navy robe and slippers, holding a mug like I was about to enjoy a quiet morning. Karen was in her HOA security chair, polo, standing dead center in my exit like she'd been elected sheriff. Her SUV was wedged sideways across my driveway, blocking my car, clipboard in one hand, phone in the other, voice loud enough for imaginary witnesses. "You're not leaving?" she snapped. "You're in violation. If you don't cooperate, I'm calling the authorities." I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I took one slow sip and said the only words that make people like her show their real face. "Go ahead. Call them." Because here's what I learned long ago. People who crave authority never know where it actually ends. They confuse HOA rules with law. They confuse intimidation with control. And when they don't get obedience, they escalate fast. Karen started pacing, narrating a story out loud about suspicious behavior and private community enforcement, like she was building a case in real time. What she didn't notice was that my phone was already recording quietly, clearly catching every threat, every lie, every step she took onto my property. I even warned her, calm as a metronome, "Ma'am, you're not authorized to be on my property. I'm asking you to leave. You're being recorded." She smirked. "This is HOA jurisdiction." That's when I knew she was about to destroy herself. She hit call with a little triumphant tilt of her chin, like the dispatcher was her personal assistant. And the second she started talking, the questions began dismantling her performance. By the time Officer Ramirez rolled up, Karen already had a full script rehearsed. What she didn't know was that I'd been 3 steps ahead from the moment her tires touched my driveway. So if you've ever dealt with a power-drunk HOA bully, stay to the end and hit subscribe so you don't miss what came next, because Karen picked the wrong 60-year-old to corner before breakfast. And the reason she got arrested isn't what you think. I didn't move to Saguaro Ridge Estates to make a point. I moved there because I was tired. 32 years in municipal compliance will do that to you. My last job was as an administrative investigator for the city. Fraud, misuse of authority, bad cops, bad contractors, bad paper trails. If it had a policy attached to it, I've probably audited it. Before that, a short, disciplined stint in the Army taught me 2 things. Keep your head when everyone else loses theirs, and never confuse volume with authority. At 58, I burned out hard. My husband, Daniel, had passed 3 years earlier, cancer that didn't care about our retirement plans. The house we'd shared felt more like a storage unit of memories than a home. So when a realtor friend said, "Eleanor, there's this quiet gated place outside Scottsdale, low crime, mature residence. HOA keeps everything clean," it sounded like an acceptable place to disappear into routine. Saguaro Ridge was picture perfect. Beige stucco, red tile roofs, gravel that never seemed to move. The same 3 types of desert shrubs repeated like a pattern. The gate clicked behind you, and the world softened. I bought a modest single-story on a cul-de-sac, south-facing, so my little patch of geraniums and herbs would get morning light. I wanted simple things: my coffee at 6 a.m., a walk at 7, a paperback on the back patio before the sun got vicious. On paper, the HOA rules were unremarkable. Trash cans not visible from the street, no RVs, no loud parties after 10. As an ex-compliance chief, I actually appreciated clarity. I read the CC and RS the first night like a bedtime story. Highlighted a few sloppy phrases. Nothing too alarming. The first months were blissfully quiet. People waved, but nobody pushed. The board president, Mark dropped off a welcome to Saguaro Ridge folder with meeting dates, paint color charts, and a smug little brochure about maintaining our property values together. I smiled, baked a thank you banana bread, and told myself I could live with a little suburban smugness in exchange for peace. For the first time since Daniel died, I had a routine that didn't hurt. I planted tomatoes in a discreet raised bed behind the side wall. I put a small, weathered wind chime by the front door. Nothing dramatic, just enough sound to know when the desert breeze decided to show up. I met Mrs. Delaney 2 doors down, 70, widowed, the type who apologizes for existing. We talk about nothing for 10 minutes at the mailbox and then retreat back to our controlled little lives. And for a while, it really did feel like I'd finally found neutral ground. A place where the worst thing that could happen was a lost Amazon package or a barking dog. That illusion lasted exactly until the HOA's first kindness found its way to my front door, tucked in a plastic sleeve with the association's logo on top and a tone I recognized instantly from a lifetime in bureaucracy, the kind of friendly reminder that is really a warning shot. At the time, I thought it was just a bored neighbor with too much time. I had no idea it was the opening move in a game I knew far better than they did. And I had no idea yet who Karen was. The friendly reminder was about my tomatoes. A trifold notice wedged in my doorframe. Logo up, tone syrupy. Dear Mrs. Vance, it began, we are delighted you've chosen to make Saguaro Ridge Estates your home. In order to preserve our community's aesthetic, please be advised that vegetable gardens are not permitted where visible from neighboring lots. This is a courtesy notice. Future violations may result in fines. My visible vegetable garden was a single, waist-high raised bed tucked behind the side wall, invisible from the street unless you walked up my driveway and craned your neck over my gate, which meant someone had done exactly that. There was no signature, just Saguaro Ridge Compliance Committee. I pulled out the CC and RS again. I'd already read them, but old habits die hard. I searched for garden, vegetable, edible. Nothing. Landscaping had to be desert appropriate and neat in appearance, but there was no rule against growing tomatoes behind a privacy wall. I knew that tone, though. In the city, we called it pre-compliance pressure. Scare people early, so they fold without a fight. I wrote a short, polite email to the address on the letterhead. Please cite the specific section prohibiting vegetable gardens not visible from common areas. My raised bed is behind a 6-foot wall and not in the front yard. If I have misunderstood the guidelines, I'm happy to correct. 2 days later, I got my answer, delivered in person. It was 7:30 a.m., already warm enough that the air had that blow-dryer feel. I was pruning some dead leaves off the tomato plants when I heard the distinct sound of purposeful footsteps in gravel. I looked up to see a woman in a navy polo with Saguaro Ridge Security and Compliance embroidered over the chest, clipboard hugged to her like a badge. Blonde bob, sunglasses even in the shade, late 30s. She didn't knock. She opened my side gate without hesitation and stepped into my yard like she was walking into a conference room. Good morning, she chirped, the kind of bright, that's really a warning. I'm Karen, the security chair. We need to talk about this non-compliant structure. She tapped her pen against my little raised bed. I wiped my hands on my gardening gloves, more to give myself a beat than because they needed it. Good morning. You're on my property, I said evenly. The gate was closed. She laughed, a sharp little exhale. Well, yes, but I'm with the HOA. We're allowed to inspect for violations. It's in the agreement you signed. I'd spent a career listening to people confidently misquote policy. There's no provision in the CC and RS authorizing unannounced entry into enclosed areas. I replied, if you'd like to discuss anything, you can ring the bell next time. Her smile thinned. We've already sent you a notice about this vegetable situation. This is a single-family community, not a farm. We have rules for a reason. I looked at the bed, then back at her. I read the rules. There's no section prohibiting this. If you have one, you're welcome to point it out in writing. She pulled a stapled packet from her clipboard with a flourish. We're updating the guidelines. Front visible edible plants are not in harmony with the community aesthetic. This is your verbal warning. I took the packet, skimmed. Draft rules, no board approval stamp, no date, no filing acknowledgement. In my world, it might as well have been fan fiction. These aren't adopted. I said, when they are, and if they apply to existing plantings, I'll review. Until then, my tomatoes stay. Something shifted in her posture, surprise that I hadn't folded, then irritation that the script wasn't being followed. You really don't want to start like this, she said quietly. People who fight the HOA never end up happy here. There it was, the veiled threat. I met her sunglasses directly. I'm not fighting anyone. I'm asking you to follow your own documents. Her jaw flexed. She turned on her heel, marching back toward the gate. Fine. We'll escalate this formally. Expect further action, Mrs. Vance. She emphasized my last name like it tasted bad. The gate clicked behind her. I exhaled, slower than I felt inside. In another life, I would have typed up a memo, CC'd half a department, attached exhibits. In retirement, I just opened my notes app and wrote, Karen, security chair. Entered side yard without permission non-compliant tomatoes. No rules cited. 7:32 a.m. Witness, none. Then I took 3 photos of the raised bed from the sidewalk to confirm what I already knew. You couldn't see a single leaf from any common area. That should have been the end of it. A test balloon gently popped. But people like Karen don't back off when you say no. They double down. And looking back, that gate closing wasn't the end of our interaction. It was the moment she decided I was a problem to be fixed. At the time, I thought she was just another overzealous volunteer with a clipboard. I had no idea that the tomatoes were just her opening move, and that the next one would drag our quiet little cul-de-sac into a full-blown spectacle. If you've ever had a neighbor like that, hit the like button, because what came next made a non-compliant garden look like a joke. If the tomato bed was the opening jab, the next few weeks were the body blows. It started subtle, little shifts in how people looked at me. Mrs. Delaney, who used to linger at the mailbox, suddenly rushed her hellos. Oh, hi, Eleanor. Can't talk. I'm late for my show, she mumbled one afternoon, clutching junk mail like it was urgent correspondence. 2 houses down, the Millers, who'd once asked who did my tile work, now avoided eye contact altogether. Their garage door always seemed to close a little faster when I walked by. None of that happens by accident. Somebody sets the tone. The paper trail backed it up. A week after Karen's yard incursion, I found a glossy flyer in my mailbox, maintaining standards in Saguaro Ridge. No names attached, just the HOA logo and a cheery font. Inside were stock photos of model homes and a paragraph about recent concerns regarding non-compliant structures, unsightly personal projects, and hostile responses to our volunteers. Hostile responses. I'd said, please use the doorbell. But in Karen speak, that translated to hostile. The next HOA email blast made it crystal clear who the example was meant to be. Mark, the board president, wrote, recently, a small number of residents have challenged our security and compliance team when reminded of community guidelines. Please remember that our volunteers give their time to keep Saguaro Ridge beautiful and safe. Resistance to reasonable requests will be documented and may impact future leniency. Future leniency. That's when I knew Karen had gone from annoying to dangerous. She wasn't just misreading rules. She was building a narrative, I walked past the clubhouse that evening and caught the tail end of one of her little huddles. Karen stood with 3 other homeowners, arms folded, her voice pitched just loud enough to carry. "We have to be consistent," she was saying. "If we let one person turn their yard into a farm, next it's RVs and junk cars. And when you confront them, they act like you're the problem. Some people just don't fit the community culture." One of the men glanced my way, then quickly away. Karen followed his eyes, registered me, and offered a too wide smile. "Hi, Eleanor. We were just talking about safety. You understand, right? Some of us are really invested in keeping this place up to standard." "In my experience," I said, "standards work best when everyone actually knows what they are." Her smile flickered. "That's why some of us step up and serve. Not everyone is cut out for it." I'd seen that dynamic in every corrupt office I ever investigated. The petty tyrant builds a little court of loyalists by feeding them a villain. I was just the latest villain. The anonymous notes started next. Thin, computer-printed slips slid under my doormat. "Your wind chime can be heard from the sidewalk. Please be considerate. Multiple residents have mentioned your watchful presence. This is a peaceful community." Watchful. Translation: I noticed Karen doing her rounds like a self-appointed marshal. Parking got interesting, too. My usual guest spot across from my driveway suddenly sprouted a laminated, reserved for board business sign, crookedly zip-tied to the pole. No such designation existed in the bylaws. At the same time, random drive-by photo sessions increased. I'd be bringing groceries in, and here came Karen, phone up, pretending to scroll, but conveniently angled toward my open trunk. One evening I caught her actually narrating under her breath as she filmed my driveway trash. Ken wheeled out 15 minutes before the allowed time, documenting ongoing pattern of disregard for community rules. She murmured like she was starring in her own procedural drama. I stepped onto the driveway, leaned against the car, and just watched her. She froze mid-record. "Need a better angle?" I asked. Her cheeks flushed. "Just routine documentation. Nothing personal." "Nothing says nothing personal like secret filming," I replied. Behind her, I saw blinds twitch in 3 different windows. That was the real game. Not the tomatoes, not the trash can. It was about making me the cautionary tale, the difficult one, the woman who fought the HOA. What Karen didn't understand was that reputational warfare cuts both ways. Every flyer, every vague email, every whispered complaint. I saved it. I printed the blast about hostile responses, circled the phrase, and slid it into a manila folder I'd labeled in red pen SRHOA pattern. I wasn't angry yet. Anger clouds judgment. I was taking inventory, because people like Karen rarely stop at gossip. Testing social boundaries is just rehearsal. Sooner or later, they try to push a legal one. And every passive-aggressive note was one more piece of kindling for the fire she didn't even know she was building under herself. But the board, cocooned in their own self-importance, still thought this was just managing a difficult resident. They hadn't realized each little performative crackdown, each emailed half-truth, was sliding quietly into a folder with their name on it. And Karen, high on her tiny kingdom, was about to stop whispering and start swinging with real threats. That's when everything stopped being theoretical and got expensive, invasive, and very, very real. The first real hit landed in my mailbox with a windowed envelope and a balance due. Notice of fine, immediate action required. According to the letter, I now owed Saguaro Ridge Estates $250 for unauthorized structure, vegetable bed, trash receptacle visibility, and hostile conduct toward association representative. Hostile conduct. That phrase again. I read the body twice. It cited sections that didn't exist, referenced adopted guidelines that still weren't on the association's website, and my favorite part, warned that continued non-cooperation may result in suspension of access to community amenities and potential legal action. In other words, pay up and shut up. I opened my laptop, pulled up the governing documents folder I downloaded when I moved in, and cross-checked every citation. Nothing matched. I highlighted each phantom section in yellow on a printed copy and slipped it into the SRHOA pattern file. Then the packages started disappearing. The first time, I assumed porch pirates. Amazon said delivered, but my front mat was empty. The second time, I checked my doorbell cam footage. There, in crisp 1080p, was Karen's navy polo at 3:17 p.m. bending down, lifting a box clearly labeled with my name, and walking it across the street to the clubhouse. I let that one marinate. I emailed Mark, the board president, attaching a still frame. "Hi, Mark. Tracking shows this package delivered to my door. Video attached shows it being removed by your security chair. I assume this is a misunderstanding. Please have it returned by tomorrow. Eleanor." No reply. The next day, a scuffed box appeared on my mat with a yellow sticky note. "Packages left out are a security risk. Please be more mindful. S.R. Security. They steal it, then scold me for tempting them. Classic. The third escalation came on a Tuesday morning when a tow truck idled at the end of my driveway like a vulture. I stepped outside, coffee in hand. The driver looked embarrassed. "Ma'am, I got a call about an unauthorized commercial vehicle. Plate matches this one." He nodded toward my 10-year-old Toyota Camry. Behind him, Karen hovered, arms folded, radiating righteousness. "This is a private community," she announced. "We don't allow work vehicles parked in driveways overnight. It's in the bylaws." I took a slow sip. "This is a mid-sized sedan registered to me personally," I said. "What exactly makes it a work vehicle?" She thrust a printout toward me of a random screenshot from my LinkedIn profile, back when I still used the Camry for city inspections. "You used it for business. That makes it commercial. Our covenants are very clear." They weren't, of course. I'd already confirmed that the no commercial vehicles clause referred to things with logos or equipment racks, not a bland beige sedan. I turned to the driver. "Did they show you any tow authorization signed by the owner or management company?" He shuffled. "No, ma'am. Just a call from security chair." Said, "HOA approved." "There is no such authority in the CC and RS." I replied, "If you hook up my car without written authorization, you and your company are liable for trespass and damages. I suggest you get that in writing or head to your next job." His eyes flicked between us. Karen hissed, "If you leave, we'll report you to the board for noncompliance." He hesitated. Then, did the calculus-experienced people always do when faced with a screamer versus someone who sounds like they've been in courtrooms? "I'm gonna check with my dispatcher," he muttered, climbing back into the truck. 2 minutes later, he drove off without another word. Karen watched him go, seething. "You can't just undermine enforcement like that," she snapped. "You're making this harder on yourself." "I'm making sure you don't drag other people into your mess," I said calmly. The next day I got a new letter, an additional $150 administrative fee for interference with contracted service providers, and a bolded threat: failure to remit payment may result in lien proceedings. That one hit a different nerve. You don't throw around the word lien lightly for retirees on fixed incomes. That letter is a heart attack in an envelope. I thought about Mrs. Delaney, about the way her hands shook at the mailbox now. How many of these had she gotten and just paid, terrified of legal action? I sat at my kitchen table, spread the letters out, and lined up the irregularities: fake citations, non-existent authority, escalating financial pressure, and now implied threats against my home. That was the moment the line moved from annoying HOA nonsense to predatory behavior. They weren't just trying to make me uncomfortable. They were trying to weaponize the fear of losing a roof over my head. I felt the anger rise, and then I flattened it the way years of investigations had trained me to do. This wasn't the time to lash out. This was the time to build the record. I opened a fresh legal pad and wrote, in neat block letters at the top, SRHOA, escalation to financial coercion. Dates, amounts, phrases, all went down in order. Because that day, looking at a $400 bill I didn't owe and a threat they couldn't legally back up, I finally admitted to myself they weren't going to stop on their own. And if I didn't do something, they weren't just going to break me, they were going to break a lot of quieter people who'd never push back. So I stopped hoping the board would come to its senses, and I started planning how to make every one of their bogus threats blow up in their face. If you've ever had to deal with a bogus fine or a lying notice, drop a comment with HOA in it. So I know I'm not the only one who's seen this playbook up close, because this was the day I decided the game was officially on. The funny thing is, they thought the word lien would scare me. I'd spent 30+ years on the other side of that word. Staring at that letter, I felt something click over in my head. I stopped looking at this as my HOA being difficult and started seeing it as what it really was, an untrained, overconfident little fiefdom playing with tools they didn't understand. And that's my specialty. Back before retirement, I was the city's administrative investigator. Misused funds, overreaching enforcement, bogus citations. I'd sat across from people like Karen and Mark more times than I could count, people who thought a clipboard and a title meant they were the law. They never liked learning the difference. So I did what I always did when a case stopped being annoying and started being interesting. I opened a fresh binder. Literally, I pulled a 3-inch white binder from my office closet, labeled the spine, Saguaro Ridge, enforcement actions, and started building their file like they were just another department under review. Left side, chronology, every letter, every sticky note, every anonymous flyer, slipped into sheet protectors and dated in the corner in pencil. Right side, facts, photos of the tomato bed from the sidewalk, screenshots of the HOA's own website showing no adopted guidelines, copies of the governing documents with the fake citations highlighted. I pulled my laptop closer and drafted a timeline in a simple table: date, action, claimed authority, actual authority, notes. No legalese, just what they did versus what they were allowed to do. Under actual authority, for most entries, I wrote the same word: none. Then I looked up Arizona statutes on HOA powers, not because I didn't know the basics, but because you never rely on memory when you're about to put a bully in a box. Open meeting requirements, due process for fines, limits on entering property, requirements for notice before liens. I bookmarked every relevant section and printed the ones Karen was trampling without even realizing it. I wasn't planning a lawsuit. Lawsuits are slow and messy. I was planning something HOA boards fear more than lawsuits: regulatory sunlight. Next, I started mapping people. Mark, board president, congenial, conflict avoidant, loved to talk about community harmony in his emails, but never answered direct questions about authority. Karen, security chair, self-appointed enforcer, clearly driving the aggression. Compliance committee, whoever Karen could bully into nodding along. I made a list of potential quiet victims. Mrs. Delaney with her shaking hands. The Millers, who'd vanished from neighborhood events after some mysterious parking misunderstanding. An older man on the next street whose lawn decorations had disappeared overnight. I didn't need them to testify. I needed to know if this pattern was wider than my yard. So I started doing something HOA bullies never suspect from a difficult resident. I listened. At the mailbox, I mentioned my fine casually. They hit you with money yet? Eleanor, Mrs. Delaney whispered, eyes darting. Apparently my tomatoes are a $250 threat to property values. I said dryly. Her shoulders sagged. They fined my grandson for parking in the driveway. Said it was street clutter. I just paid it. I can't have trouble. There it was. Fear. Back home, I added a bullet point. Pattern of financial pressure on least confrontational residents. The more I wrote, the calmer I felt. This wasn't chaos. It was a sloppy little system, and sloppy systems leave tracks. The last piece was the one Karen never imagined I'd think about: jurisdiction. HOAs love to say we're a private community, like it's a force field. It isn't. The second they wander off their paper and into things like trespass, harassment, or false reports, they leave the comfort of their bylaws and walk straight into criminal law. So I printed one more set of pages, state statutes on criminal trespass and false reporting to law enforcement. I highlighted the elements like I was prepping for an exam. Unlawful entry into a fenced residential yard after being told to leave. Knowingly giving false information to an officer to implicate another in a crime. Karen had already tiptoed near the first one when she walked into my side yard uninvited. The bogus tow attempt and the hostile conduct. Label told me she was itching to edge into the second. I didn't have to push her there. All I had to do was stop protecting her from herself. So I made one final preparation. I set up my phone with a shortcut, double-tapped the back, and it started recording video, screen dark. I practiced the motion until it was muscle memory. I saved the non-emergency number for the local police in my favorites and wrote myself a short, calm script for talking to dispatch. That's when I stopped reacting and started planning. From that point on, every interaction with Karen had a purpose. Every time she puffed up and said, "I'll call the authorities," I smiled a little inside, because the authorities I was thinking of didn't answer to her. And the day she finally decided to block my driveway and make that call, I was more than ready to let her walk herself, step by arrogant step, straight into a set of handcuffs. All I had to do was keep my voice low, my camera rolling, and my coffee hot. Once I flipped from annoyed resident to investigator, my days got very structured. Morning coffee, walk, and then evidence. I started with what Karen thought was her strongest weapon, her paper trail. People like her love documents, as long as they're the kind they can wave, not the kind they can be judged by. So I logged into the HOA portal and pulled every newsletter, every reminder, every policy update from the last 2 years. I downloaded them, sorted them by date, and highlighted every time security and compliance was mentioned. Funny thing, Karen's title showed up exactly 3 months after she bought her house. Before that, security was just a line item, not a little kingdom. Next, I went analog. I walked the neighborhood at quiet times, early afternoons, late evenings, phone in my pocket, camera one tap away. I took photos of every violation Karen claimed to care about being committed by everybody else. 3 tomato beds visible from side yards. A lifted pickup with a company logo parked overnight. 2 trash cans sitting happily in plain view until noon the next day. No flyers on their doors. No tow trucks in front of their driveways. Each picture went into my binder with a note, selective enforcement. No action observed. Then I started listening more deliberately. At the pool, a couple in their 70s whispered about how they had to repaint the trim because Karen said the shade was off. At the clubhouse, I overheard a man grumble that his disabled brother couldn't park near the ramp without getting a warning about optics. I didn't push. I just asked gentle, open questions. Did they cite a rule? Was it in writing? Did they give you a chance to appeal? Most of the time, the answers were some version of, "No, but I didn't want trouble." Back home, I added a second tab to the binder, Victim statements, informal. Date, person, description only. Elderly male, lot 24. Summary of complaint, whether there was documentation. Patterns emerged fast. Older, quieter residents got the worst of Karen's firmness. I also filed public records requests with the city quietly online for any calls for service to Saguaro Ridge from the past year. When the report came back, there it was in black and white, a cluster of calls from one phone number, Karen's listing suspicious person, refusing to comply, traffic hazard, all resolved with no action taken. A normal person might have stopped there. I didn't. I wanted to know if the board was complicit or just lazy. So I attended the next HOA meeting, sat in the back with my notebook, and watched. Karen perched near the front, legs crossed, speaking more than Mark, the president, even when it wasn't her turn. When an older man quietly asked if there was a way to contest a fine, Karen cut in before Mark could answer. "If you just follow the rules, you don't have to worry about fines," she said, sweet as lemon juice in a paper cut. I raised my hand. "What's the appeal process?" I asked. The CC and RS reference a hearing, but the notices I've seen don't mention one. Karen stiffened. Mark fumbled. "Well, we handle things informally. We don't need to be adversarial." "Informal is how you end up in court," I said mildly, "or in front of the state regulator." Pens paused over notebooks. Karen shot me a look that could strip paint. After the meeting, as people drifted out, I lingered near the coffee urn. A man I recognized from the public records. Same lot number as one of Karen's suspicious person calls. Sidled up. "You really gonna go after them?" he murmured. "I'm just making sure they know where their authority stops," I said. "You ever had the police called on you for taking out your trash?" He winced. "Once." Said I was lurking. "I've lived here 15 years. Another bullet point. Another pattern. The final step was tightening my own perimeter. I upgraded my doorbell cam to cover more of the driveway and set it to save clips to the cloud automatically. I enabled audio with the friendly little chime that announces, "You are being recorded." I printed a small, legally accurate sign for my side gate. "No entry without owner consent except emergency services." Then I rehearsed. Not some dramatic speech, just 3 sentences said in a calm, firm tone for when Karen inevitably pushed too far again. "Ma'am, you are not authorized to be on my property. I'm asking you to leave. Now. You are being recorded." Said once, clearly, then no arguing. Let her talk herself into trouble. By the time my binder was an inch thick, I didn't need to hunt for proof anymore. I had a neat package. Selective enforcement, fake citations, financial pressure, possible trespass, a trail of baseless police calls. All I needed now was one more overreach from Karen, one undeniable on-camera incident tying everything together, which meant the best thing I could do was exactly what most people in my position can't stand to do: wait. So I kept my routine. Coffee at 6, walk at 7, weeding the tomatoes under that relentless Arizona sun. And when Karen finally decided to manufacture her big showdown, blocking my driveway and dialing 911 like it was her personal concierge service, my cameras were ready, my notes were in order, and my thumb knew exactly where to tap. I built the trap. All that was left was to let her step into it. And she did, loudly, confidently, and on video. If you've watched this far and you like seeing bullies walk into their own mess, make sure you're subscribed, because the morning she chose my driveway as her stage was the morning her whole act collapsed in front of an audience she did not control. The morning Karen finally overplayed her hand didn't look dramatic at all. It was just Tuesday, pale Sunday, 6:45 a.m., the kind of quiet where you can hear sprinklers ticking 3 houses over. I was in my usual uniform, navy robe, old slippers, mug of black coffee warming my left hand. I'd backed the Camry halfway down the driveway, trunk loaded with 2 boxes I needed to drop at the post office. Tomatoes watered, mailbox key in my pocket, doorbell cam humming. Normal, until a white SUV swung across the street and stopped sideways, blocking the end of my driveway like a police barricade. I watched it a beat, took a sip. The driver's door flew open, and out came Karen in her security and compliance polo, clipboard tucked under one arm, phone already in her hand. "Stop right there," she barked, striding up like she just caught a bank robbery in progress. I put the car in park, rolled the window down halfway. "Morning, Karen." "You're not leaving." She jabbed her pen toward my hood. "You are under active investigation for ongoing violations. Until we complete a property inspection, you are not allowed to remove items or leave the premises. That's obstruction." I let that word hang there. Obstruction. She'd been Googling again. Meanwhile, my thumb double-tapped the back of my phone on the console. The little haptic buzz told me what I needed to know. "Recording." "Ma'am," I said evenly, "you're blocking my driveway." "As security chair, I am authorized to secure a scene," she shot back. "You've been hiding non-compliant items, interfering with enforcement, and we have reason to believe you're attempting to remove evidence right now." Evidence? 2 boxes of old books and winter clothes. Behind her, blinds twitched. "Mrs." Delaney's curtain lifted an inch. Karen stepped closer, up to my front fender, angling her phone at my windshield. "State your name for the record," she demanded. "You are on notice that this interaction is being documented for law enforcement and the board." She thought that line made her sound official. To my ear, it sounded like a gift. I killed the engine, opened the door, and stepped out slowly, coffee still in my left hand, phone loose in my right. "Karen," I said, loud enough for the driveway mic to catch, "you are not law enforcement. You do not have authority to detain me or block my vehicle." Her chin jerked up. "I have the authority of the HOA. This is a private community. We enforce our rules. You don't get to decide when they apply." She edged past me toward the side gate without asking, hand already on the latch. Time for the lines I'd rehearsed. "Ma'am, you are not authorized to be on my property," I said, clear and calm. "I'm asking you to leave. Now, you are being recorded." She froze just long enough for that last sentence to land, then snorted. "I told the board you were hostile," she muttered, and yanked the gate open anyway, stepping into my side yard like she owned it. There it was, trespass on camera after a clear verbal notice. She started snapping photos of the same tomato bed she'd been obsessed with for weeks, narrating under her breath. Subject attempting to conceal non-compliant structure, possible resale activity, potential zoning issue. Zoning over tomatoes. I could have called the non-emergency line right then. Instead, I let the rope play out. She came back through the gate, all adrenaline and certainty. "That's it," she said. "You've left me no choice. I'm calling the police. You are obstructing enforcement and creating a hostile environment." I took another sip of coffee. It was still comfortably hot. "Go ahead," I said. "Call them." Her eyes lit up like I'd handed her a promotion. She jabbed at her screen, hit 911 instead of the non-emergency line, of course, and put it on speaker so everyone within 30 feet could hear. 911, what is your emergency?" the dispatcher asked. "This is Karen Thompson, security chair for Saguaro Ridge," she announced, voice climbing onto its favorite stage. "I'm dealing with a non-compliant resident who is threatening me and attempting to flee the scene with evidence. I need officers dispatched immediately." I let the silence hang just long enough for the dispatcher's next question. "Ma'am, are you or anyone else in immediate danger?" Karen faltered for half a second, then committed. "Yes, she's being aggressive and blocking me from doing my job. I was standing 3 feet away, robe tie loose, mug in hand. "Can you describe the nature of the threat?" the dispatcher pressed. She's yelling, and she tried to stop me from securing the area, and she's driving a vehicle in a dangerous manner. Karen improvised, words tumbling over each other. My Camry sat in park, engine off. I held my phone up just enough that the screen stayed dark, but the mic stayed clear. "This is the homeowner," I said calmly, not raising my voice. "I am unarmed, standing in my driveway. My vehicle is off. The HOA volunteer on scene has blocked my car with her SUV, entered my fenced yard without consent, and is now making false statements. The entire interaction is on video." There was a pause on the line, the kind that says a seasoned dispatcher has just recategorized your call. "Units are en route," she said. "Both of you, please remain where you are and do not escalate." "Oh, we'll remain," Karen said triumphantly, ending the call. She turned to me with a satisfied smirk. "You really should have just paid the fines, Eleanor. This is going to go on your record." In her mind, she just summoned backup. What she didn't know was that my record, the binder, the videos, the statutory highlights, was about to meet someone who actually understood the difference between a bylaw and the law, and that by the time Officer Ramirez pulled up, Karen's little performance on my driveway would be exhibit in a case she didn't even know she'd opened on herself. Officer Ramirez rolled up before my mug had even lost its heat. Blue and red washed over Karen's white SUV, still parked sideways across my driveway like a crime scene barrier. He stepped out of the cruiser, mid-30s, calm eyes, the walk of someone who's seen real emergencies. Karen beelined to him. "Officer, over here. I'm the security chair. We've got a non-compliant, hostile resident attempting to flee with evidence. I need you to remove her so we can conduct an inspection." He held up a hand, not rude, just firm. "Ma'am, slow down. I'll talk to you one at a time." His gaze slid to me, still by my hood, coffee in hand. "That your house, ma'am?" "Yes, sir," I said. "I'm Eleanor Vance. This is my property. I'm unarmed, and everything you're about to hear is on video." I tapped my pocket. Karen scoffed. "She's recording us without authorization. That's another violation." Ramirez turned to her. "Recording in public is legal," he said, flat. "Start from the top. What exactly is the crime?" Karen straightened, slipping into her HOA voice. "She's obstructing enforcement, threatening me, and recklessly operating a vehicle. I told dispatch. She tried to flee when I initiated an inspection. I had to secure the scene with my vehicle." She gestured proudly at her SUV blocking my exit. "Okay," Ramirez said. "Any weapons? Physical contact?" "Well, no, but she's been verbally aggressive for weeks, undermining my authority. This is a private community. We have rules. I'm in charge of security." He blinked once. "Private community doesn't change state law, ma'am." He turned back to me. "Ms. Vance." I handed him a simple business card I'd kept from my last year at the city, the one that still said Administrative Investigator, Municipal Compliance. "Retired now," I said. "This morning, I backed my car out of my garage. Ms. Thompson," I nodded toward Karen, "pulled her SUV across my driveway, blocked my vehicle, entered my fenced side yard after I told her not to, and then called 911 claiming I was threatening and trying to flee with evidence. My car's been in park since she arrived. No one's raised their voice but her." He studied the card, then me. "You said you have video?" "Yes, sir. Doorbell cam has her coming onto my property yesterday and today, and my phone's been recording since she blocked my driveway. Audio's clear. You can hear me tell her to leave my yard." Behind him, Mrs. Delaney's door creaked open an inch. "Officer," she called, voice shaking. I, I saw her block Eleanor in. She does this. She told me she'd teach me a lesson if I ever parked my grandson's car in the driveway again. Ramirez glanced back at the slowly gathering semicircle of neighbors. Fear on their faces, not of me. He exhaled, the long kind that says a picture just came into focus. All right, he said, here's what I'm going to do. Ma'am, to me, can I review that footage on your porch? Of course. I let him up, pulled up the clips. We watched Karen's SUV swing sideways, her march up my driveway, my clear, even statement, you are not authorized to be on my property. I'm asking you to leave. You are being recorded. Then her pushing through the gate anyway. Next clip, her 911 call on speaker, full of creative fiction. Ramirez's jaw tightened a fraction. Can you email these to me? Already queued. I said, I've also logged dates of prior uninvited entries and a few non-emergency calls she's made about other residents. He nodded once, then walked back down the driveway to Karen, who was waiting with her arms crossed like a plaintiff. Ms. Thompson, he said, voice professional but cooler now. I've reviewed video of this incident. You blocked her driveway with your vehicle, entered her fenced yard after she told you not to, and made statements to 911 that don't match what I just saw. That's because she deleted the part where he cut her off. Doorbell cams don't edit themselves. And your own voice is on the recording. You were told to leave, and you went in anyway. She went pink. I have authority. I'm security chair. We enforce the rules. This is a private community. You work for us. That did it. Ramirez's eyebrows lifted just a hair. No, ma'am. I work for the city. And in this city, you don't get to detain neighbors with your SUV or enter their yards because you don't like their tomatoes. It's more serious than that, she snapped. She's dangerous. Ask the board. We have fines on file. He held up a hand. Fines are a civil matter. Blocking a driveway, trespassing after being told to leave, and knowingly giving false information to 911, those are criminal. Her mouth opened, closed. You can't be serious. I was just doing my job. I'm going to ask you to turn around and put your hands behind your back, Ramirez said. You're under arrest for criminal trespass and false reporting to law enforcement. The words seemed to bounce off her at first, like she'd never considered they could apply to her. This is insane, she barked. You can't arrest me. I'm with the HOA. He was already pulling the cuffs from his belt. Right now, you're with me. Turn around, ma'am. She looked past him, straight at me, eyes wild. Eleanor, tell him I'm just enforcing the rules. This is going in your file, too. I took a small sip of coffee, still pleasantly warm. I told you, Karen, I said softly, you don't get to make up your own law. The metallic click of the cuffs echoed a little in the morning air. A couple of neighbors flinched. Mrs. Delaney covered her mouth. As Ramirez guided Karen toward the cruiser, she twisted her head over her shoulder. This is a private community. You can't do this here. He opened the back door. Ma'am, the law applies on this side of the gate just like it does everywhere else. He settled her inside, closed the door, and walked back to me for one last detail exchange. Case number, email confirmation. A polite assurance they'd be in touch. Then he nodded toward my mug. Didn't even get cold, did it? He said, half smile. Not even close, I answered. Karen sat behind the glass, sputtering, pulling uselessly at the cuffs. Watching the cruiser pull away, taillights disappearing past the manicured cacti. I thought that would be the end of it. But exposing Karen in front of half the cul-de-sac was only the first crack. Because once the board realized the police report didn't just have her name on it, but their associations too, the real panic started. And that's when their power, their money, and their precious leniency began to crumble in ways a simple arrest could never match. If you've dealt with an HOA bully who finally got called on their bluff, drop a comment with how it ended for them, because for Saguaro Ridge, the fallout was just getting started. The cruiser had barely turned the corner with Karen in the back when the damage control squad came jogging in. Mark, the board president, hurried down the sidewalk in golf shorts and a collared shirt, HOA lanyard still around his neck like it meant something outside a conference room. Behind him, 2 committee regulars trailed along, faces tight. Eleanor. Mark panted, not even bothering with hello. This is all a big misunderstanding. We really should have handled this internally. I took a last sip of coffee, finally setting the mug on my porch rail. Your security chair just got arrested for trespass and false reporting. I said, that's not an internal memo, Mark. That's a police report. His smile twitched. Officer Ramirez may have overreacted. Karen is very passionate. We'll talk to him, get everyone on the same page, and in return, maybe you could, refrain from pressing charges. For the good of the community. There it was. Not. Are you okay? Not. Did she really block you in? Just, can you help us make this go away? I don't press criminal charges. I said, the state does. And since he cuffed her on his own initiative, I'd say he's already on his page. One of the committee women cleared her throat. We can rescind your fines, she offered. All of them. Wipe the slate clean. Obviously, there were misunderstandings about the vegetable bed and the parking and the, hostility. Mrs. Delaney's door creaked open wider behind them. 2 more neighbors had drifted to their driveways. They were all listening. So let me get this straight, I said. You knew she was entering yards without permission. You signed off on bogus fines. You let her threaten people with liens. And your solution is to quietly void mine and pretend this never happened. Mark bristled. Nobody threatened anyone. We follow an established escalation matrix. Show me, I said, in writing, in your adopted, filed policies, because I've got your CC and RS, your last 2 years of newsletters, and a copy of state statute that say otherwise. He opened his mouth, closed it. Look, Eleanor, if this blows up, property values. There it is. I cut in the magic phrase. I turned slightly, so my voice carried to the cluster of neighbors. Your board is less worried about Karen blocking driveways and calling 911 on retirees than they are about Zillow. Color climbed up his neck. That's not fair. What's not fair, I said evenly, is scaring people like Mrs. Delaney into paying junk fines because they're afraid of legal action you're not actually authorized to take. Her little gasp behind him landed harder than any speech I could have given. He tried to pivot. We'll open a formal review. Suspend Karen from her position pending outcome. No need to involve regulators. He said the last word like it tasted sour. I already involved regulators. I said, City Code Enforcement has your selective rule updates. The state AG's HOA division has a complaint with a nice, tidy binder attached. Today just added video. The committee woman went pale. You filed with the state. Systems work better when someone reminds them they exist. I replied. They retreated after that. All murmured, we'll be in touch, like this was a customer service hiccup. But over the next month, the consequences unfolded in ways even I hadn't fully predicted. An email blast went out first. Effective immediately, the security and compliance chair has resigned. All enforcement actions taken under this role are under review. No further fines will be issued until new procedures are adopted. Translation: Karen's kingdom had been raised. Then came the letter from the management company. Real lawyers this time, not Canva flyer tough talk. They announced a third-party audit of past enforcement, a temporary freeze on lien proceedings, and mandatory training for board members on state HOA law. Mandatory. I smiled when I saw that word. At the next meeting, attendance tripled. Neighbors who'd never said a peep were suddenly reading questions off notepads. What's the appeal process? Are fines optional? Who approved Karen entering fenced yards? Mark, suddenly humble, read from a prepared statement about regrettable overreach and steps we're taking to rebuild trust. He caught my eye afterward. You could apply for the board. He said weakly, we could use someone who understands this stuff. I didn't move here to run meetings. I said, I moved here to drink my coffee in peace. You just needed to be reminded where your authority stops. The state's letter came a week later. Findings: improper fine procedures, failure to provide hearings, unauthorized entry onto enclosed property, misuse of the word lien in communications. Recommendations: mandatory policy revisions, monitored for 12 months, any future violation subject to civil penalties. Money and power: the only language HOAs really listen to. Fines quietly vanished from several mailboxes. Mrs. Delaney confessed in a whisper that a check she'd mailed for a parking violation had been returned with an apology letter. The reserved for board business sign across from my driveway disappeared overnight. And Karen? She pled down, from what I heard. Community service, a fine, a no-contact order for me and 2 other residents. More importantly, a condition. She was barred from serving on any HOA board or committee for 5 years. For someone who lived for lanyards and clipboards, that stung more than the mugshot. From then on, the neighborhood felt different. Still beige, still manicured, but the fear was gone. People put tomato pots in their side yards. A contractor's truck parked overnight once, and nobody sprinted out with a camera. Property values didn't tank. The sun still rose. The only thing that changed was that the bully with the title learned the title wasn't armor. And for me, I finally got what I came for. Quiet mornings, hot coffee, and a gate that means privacy, not private fiefdom. If you're still with me, and you think more HOAs need this kind of wake-up call, hit the like button. It tells the algorithm there are a lot of us who are very tired of clipboards pretending to be badges. In the weeks after Karen's mugshot became the worst-kept secret in Saguaro Ridge, the neighborhood went strangely quiet. Not the uneasy, surveillance state, quiet she curated. No more blinds snapping shut when I walked by. No more phones sneak filming my trash can. This was the quiet you get when people exhale at the same time and realize the sky didn't fall. My own life shrank back down to the size I'd wanted from the beginning. 6 a.m. Coffee still in that chipped navy mug. 6:15. The soft clink of my gate as I checked on the tomatoes Karen had tried to turn into a federal case. They grew right through the drama, red and oblivious. Every so often, someone would stop at the sidewalk and linger a second longer than before. The man with the brother in the wheelchair nodded toward my side yard one afternoon. Guess we're allowed to have color again, he said. Always were, I answered. Some people just forgot to read the part where it says we still live in America. The board tried hard to pretend it was all an unfortunate misunderstanding. The glossy newsletters stopped mentioning security and compliance and started talking about community partnership. Fines dropped off a cliff. Meetings suddenly had printed agendas, and an attorney parked in the back like a chaperone. I went to one more just to see if the lesson had taken. Mark cleared his throat, clutched his papers like a life raft. We're adopting new enforcement procedures, he announced. All inspections by appointment only. All fines subject to appeal. No board member may enter enclosed yards without written consent or emergency personnel present. He didn't look at me when he said it, but half the room did. Afterward, in the parking lot, Mrs. Delaney shuffled up, a little straighter than I'd ever seen her. They sent me a letter, she said they reviewed my account, and I'd overpaid. They're crediting me back 3 months of fines. That's not kindness, I said. That's fear of the auditor they don't know by name yet. She smiled, small but real. Either way, I slept last night. That was enough for me. People asked if I was going to run for the board. I told them I'd had my fill of fluorescent lights and agendas years ago. My job here was done the moment the rules stopped being a weapon and went back to being rules. As for Karen, I saw her once more. I was pulling out of the gate a few months later when a beat-up sedan idled at the visitor lane. She sat behind the wheel in plain clothes, no polo, no clipboard, no lanyard. She spotted me, started to roll down her window, then thought better of it. The no-contact order probably helped her memory. She drove in as a guest. No fiefdom, no siren song of, "I'll call the authorities." Just another residence visitor waiting for the arm to lift. Systems have a way of correcting themselves if you feed them enough truth and give them time. These days, my biggest HOA interaction is the automatic debit on the first of the month. The newsletters talk about potlucks instead of ongoing compliance concerns. The reserved for board business space across from my driveway, it's just another guest spot now, usually occupied by a grandkid's hatchback. I still keep the binder on a shelf in my office. Not out of paranoia, out of habit. 30-plus years in compliance taught me one thing above all. Power doesn't go away. It just looks for a new host. And around here, word got out that the retired woman on the cul-de-sac with the tomato bed and the navy robe is not the soft target she looks like at 6 in the morning. So I drink my coffee while it's hot, tend my garden, and let the desert sun bleach the last of Karen's flyers into nothing. In that neighborhood, the war with the HOA was over. But for those who know the system from the inside, they know there's always another committee president somewhere who thinks they're above the law. Subscribe to the channel and watch the absurd